A mother knows when something don't sit right in her spirit, and that morning, mine felt like it had been shaken awake. I remember standing in my kitchen, both hands wrapped around a warm mug of chamomile tea, staring at the steam rising like a quiet warning. It was early, too early for anyone to be calling, but my phone kept lighting up, buzzing across the counter as if it had something urgent to tell me. It was my son, Daniel. And when I finally picked up, his voice didn't sound like his own. It cracked, trembled, then broke entirely as he said the words that made my knees buckle under me. Mom, she lost the baby. Just like that. No build-up. No explanation. Just a single sentence that sliced through me like a blade. My daughter-in-law, Hannah, sweet, soft-spoken, church-going Hannah, had been 6 months along. I'd knitted blankets, bought gently used baby books, pressed my hands to her stomach every Sunday after lunch, waiting to feel the faint flutter of the little life we were promised. And now, gone? I remember sinking into a chair, the wooden legs creaking under the weight of shock. My breath wouldn't settle. My heart wouldn't listen. Daniel, what happened? I whispered. He didn't know. She hadn't told him much. Just said something went wrong at night, that she woke up bleeding, that the hospital tried their best. Things just didn't add up, but I didn't question, not then. Grief does that. It hushes the questions. It numbs the instincts. It makes you polite when you should be paying attention. So instead, I murmured, "I'm coming over," and hung up before he could argue. On the drive to their house, the sky was gray and heavy, almost as if it recognized the weight inside my chest. The world felt muted. The radio stayed off. I kept seeing that baby, my grandbaby, floating somewhere between what could have been and what now would never be. But when I walked through their front door, the first thing I saw wasn't grief. It wasn't swollen eyes or tissues piled on the coffee table. It was Hannah, standing in the kitchen, perfectly dressed, eyeliner sharp, hair pinned, sipping orange juice like she was getting ready for a Sunday brunch. She smiled, yes, smiled when she saw me. "Oh, hi, Mom," she said softly, like she'd just misplaced her keys, not lost a whole child. My heart rattled. Something slid cold down my spine. Daniel rushed to me, pulling me into a hug so tight, so desperate, that his grief felt real, raw, painful. But Hannah, she moved around the kitchen with an ease that felt wrong. All wrong. "Where were you treated, sweetheart?" I asked gently. She blinked twice, like the question caught her off guard. "Oh, Mercy General. The nearby hospital. The one that was 20 minutes away. The one she had previously said she didn't trust because they misdiagnosed a sprain once." But again, grief makes you quiet. And I stayed quiet too. Still, something whispered through the back of my mind. She don't look like a woman who lost a baby. But I swallowed that thought. Pushed it down like something shameful. For Daniel's sake. Because my son loved this woman more than he loved himself. And I wasn't about to be the one to add to his pain. Not on that day. Before all this, before suspicion began eating at me like slow rust, our life looked simple. Every Sunday, Daniel and Hannah came over for dinner. I cooked pot roast just the way Daniel liked, falling apart, seasoned with thyme and a touch of onion powder. He always scraped the bottom of the pot for those crispy bits. Hannah usually sat at the kitchen island, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone with a polite little smile while I cooked. We weren't close, but we weren't strangers either. I tried, Lord knows I tried. Invited her on grocery runs. Asked her to help knead dough or shell peas. Tried to bridge the soft, delicate silence that always seemed to sit between us. Sometimes she joined me, sometimes she didn't. Most days she said she was tired, busy, or not feeling. Well, then the pregnancy came. And Daniel, my sweet boy, was over the moon. He started fixing up the spare bedroom in their home, painting it soft yellow, assembling the crib with more caution than I'd ever seen in him. But something strange happened to Hannah after she announced the pregnancy. She became more distant, more guarded, more dramatic in small, strange ways. She'd hold her stomach with exaggerated gentleness whenever someone looked at her. She'd sigh loudly at family gatherings, complaining about how hard pregnancy is even though her tiny frame barely changed in those first months. And when I asked softly one evening, "Have you felt any kicks yet?" she said, "Oh yes, all the time." But she never let me feel them. Not once. "It makes me uncomfortable," she'd say, placing both hands protectively over her belly. "Maybe when the baby's bigger." Even then, something inside me whispered, "That's odd." But I brushed it off. A mother should trust her daughter-in-law, right? Give her grace. Give her time. Besides, Daniel looked happier than he had in years. He glowed like someone who had found purpose. And so I let myself believe, even when little things didn't make sense. Even when her baby bump grew then shrank then grew again. Even when she avoided her prenatal appointments or insisted on going alone. I ignored it all. Love makes us blind. But hope makes us foolish. That illusion of calm, of family, of closeness lasted until the morning of that phone call. The morning her story would begin to unravel. The morning I would begin to see her not as a daughter-in-law, but as a stranger sitting in my son's life with secrets in her eyes and a lie wrapped around her like a second skin. And I had no idea then, no idea at all, that the baby she said she lost was never hers to begin with. I stayed with them most of that day, the day she claimed she lost the baby. Daniel was a wreck. He kept wringing his hands, walking from room to room like he was trying to outrun the emptiness that had just swallowed him whole. But Hannah moved like someone who'd misplaced a pair of earrings, not a whole child. She cleaned the counters, reorganized the mail, adjusted the throw pillows on the couch. And every now and then, she'd catch me looking at her and fold her arms over her stomach, as if remembering she was supposed to be grieving. "Are the doctors sure you don't need a follow-up?" I asked gently. She didn't look up from wiping the counter. "No, they said I'll be fine." No detail. No hesitation. Just a simple answer, too simple. She'd been nearly 6 months along. There should have been paperwork. Instructions. Pain. Tears. But instead, she just said she was fine and went back to wiping a perfectly clean countertop. A little voice inside me whispered, "Something is wrong here. Something is very, very wrong." But grief muffles instincts. It makes you doubt yourself. And so I kept quiet. For Daniel. That week, he stopped by my house nearly every evening. He'd sit at the kitchen table with red eyes and say, "Mom, I don't understand." One minute she was fine. The next minute, she wasn't. He cried. And I held him. A different kind of pain sat in my own heart, one that didn't quite match his. His was the pain of losing a child. Mine was the pain of trying to believe in something I knew didn't feel real. The first real crack in Hannah's story came 12 days later. Daniel was at work, and I decided to bring them dinner. Chicken casserole, a little overbaked, but still warm, with homemade biscuits on the side. When I knocked, she didn't answer. The house was quiet, but her car was in the driveway, and the lights were on inside. I knocked again. Still nothing. I hesitated, then tried the handle. It opened. "Hannah?" I called softly. "Honey, it's me." Nothing. I stepped inside, the air smelling faintly like lavender detergent and something else, cinnamon maybe. But underneath it was a sharpness, a strange sterile scent that didn't belong. That's when I heard it. A faint sound. Like rustling. Coming from upstairs. "Hello?" I called again. No answer. Something pulled me forward, a whisper of instinct I'd ignored for months. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking beneath me. The rustling grew louder, papers maybe, or plastic. When I reached the bedroom door, it was cracked open. And inside, Hannah was standing in front of the mirror, wearing a maternity belly. A fake one. The beige straps wrapped around her torso, the silicone bump perfectly rounded under her shirt, until she adjusted it and peeled it off like someone removing a costume. She froze when she saw me. I froze too. The world stopped. The air thickened. The truth hit me like a wave of ice. She wasn't pregnant. She had never been pregnant. "Hannah," my voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing?" Her hands flew behind her back, hiding the bump as if I hadn't already seen it. It's not what you think." But her voice was unsteady, thin, brittle, cracking at the edges. "What I think?" I stepped into the room, my breath shaking. You told my son, my boy, that he lost his child. You let him grieve. You let all of us grieve." She backed up until she hit the dresser, eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape. "I can explain," she said. "Then explain," I whispered. "Please." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her hands trembled. Her face went pale. And for one brief moment, I saw something human in her expression. Fear. Shame. Something fragile. But then her eyes hardened. Her shoulders straightened. And she said the one thing I didn't expect: it wasn't supposed to go this far. My heart knocked against my ribs. "What does that mean?" She took a breath so sharp it sounded painful. It wasn't supposed to be real. It was supposed to be temporary. I stared at her. What was temporary? She closed her eyes. The pregnancy. Suspicion turns to shock. I felt my hands go cold. My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Temporary," I asked. She swallowed hard, eyes darting everywhere except toward me. "I didn't expect Daniel to be so excited," she whispered. "I thought it would buy me time." "Time for what?" My voice cracked. "I didn't care." She hesitated. And then something in her broke, just a little. "To fix things," she murmured. "To make him stay." A coldness crept up my spine. "Hannah, were you afraid he'd leave you?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke louder than words ever could. And in that silence, something else hit me. Something I wasn't ready to face. If she wasn't pregnant, then what exactly had she lost? My stomach twisted. "What did you tell Daniel happened at the hospital?" Her jaw tensed. "I told him what he needed to hear." "No, Hannah." My voice shook for the first time. "What actually happened?" She turned away. Not out of guilt, but out of calculation. And I realized then, she was deciding whether to lie again, or finally tell the truth. I waited. I didn't blink. Finally, she exhaled shakily. There was no hospital visit. The room spun. The world tilted. My hand gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "You lied," I whispered. "You lied to him. About everything." She nodded barely, but enough. "How long?" I asked. "How long were you going to keep pretending?" "I don't know," she said. I panicked. Panicked? I felt tears sting my eyes. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my son?" A silence settled over the room. Thick. Unbearable. Then she whispered, "I wasn't supposed to be caught." And that was the moment something inside me broke. Not anger. Not hatred. Not even betrayal. It was grief all over again, but for a different reason. Because now, we hadn't just lost a baby. We were about to lose a marriage too. And Daniel, my boy, had no idea. Not yet. But he would. And the truth was going to destroy him. I don't remember leaving that bedroom. I don't remember walking down the stairs or stepping out the front door. All I remember is the sick, hollow feeling inside my chest, like someone had scooped something out of me and left a cold, empty space behind. The afternoon air was warm, but I shivered the whole drive home. My hands clutched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The world outside blurred as if I were underwater. My mind ran in circles. She lied. She faked it. She made him believe he was going to be a father. She made us mourn something that never existed. Every time the thought repeated, it cut deeper. And then came the guilt. Guilt for not noticing sooner. Guilt for ignoring all those whispers in my spirit. Guilt for believing in her when something inside me always felt off. I sat in my driveway for nearly 20 minutes before I could breathe normally again. And even then, my lungs only worked because I forced them to. I didn't tell Daniel that day. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I needed to protect him. How do you walk into your son's life and say, "Son," she lied, "your baby never existed"? How do you look at the boy you raised, the one who painted a nursery with yellow walls and spent hours assembling a crib, and snatch away the last piece of hope he had left? I didn't have the strength. Not yet. So I waited. But the secret, it didn't let me sleep. Didn't let me eat. Didn't let me think about anything else. What made everything worse was the fact that life around me didn't stop. The grocery store still played cheerful music. Neighbors still waved while walking their dogs. People still laughed on their porch swings as the sun set behind them. Meanwhile, I was carrying a truth so heavy it felt like iron chained around my chest. Then, 3 days later, something happened that forced my hand. It was Daniel again. He dropped by my house after work, shoulders slumped, exhaustion pressing down on him like a weight. "Mom," he said, sliding into a kitchen chair. "Something's off with Hannah." Every nerve in my body went tight. I tried to keep my voice steady. "How do you mean?" "She's been acting strange. Jumping when I walk in. Snapping at little things. Avoiding me." He rubbed his forehead. "And today she said she had to go to Mercy General again. A checkup," she said. My heart paused. Mercy General. The same hospital she claimed she'd gone to the night she lost the baby. "Did she want you to go with her?" I asked. "No." She insisted on going alone. My breath stilled. Daniel looked exhausted, confused, lost. "Mom, ever since that night, something feels wrong. I keep asking her questions and she gets defensive." He swallowed hard. "Part of me wonders if she's hiding something." My throat tightened painfully. He was so close to the truth, yet still blind to the magnitude of the lie. "Daniel," I began carefully, "has she shown you any paperwork?" "From the hospital." He shook his head. "No. She said she didn't want to keep any of it, that it made her sad." A lie. Another lie. "She didn't even have a discharge bracelet, Mom. Shouldn't she have had something?" Yes, she should have." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "Daniel," I said softly, "you deserve answers." His eyes lifted to mine, red-rimmed with emotion. "I know, but every time I bring it up, she gets upset. She says I'm pressuring her." He stared at his hands. "I don't want to hurt her. She's been through enough." I looked at him then, my boy, my child, full of compassion even after being gutted by grief. And I knew then, Hannah didn't deserve the grace he was giving her. But he deserved the truth. And I was done keeping quiet. I went to their house the next morning. The drive felt longer than usual. The trees on the side of the road looked sharper somehow. The air heavier. When I reached the porch, I didn't hesitate. I knocked. Firmly. Hannah opened the door wearing the same sweet smile she used to fool us all. "Oh, Mom," she said, voice soft but eyes unreadable. "Come in." I stepped inside, the smell of cinnamon and lavender still clinging to the air like a mask. "We need to talk," I said. Her smile faded, just a flicker at first, then completely. "What about?" "You know what about." She crossed her arms. "I told you I panicked. I told you it wasn't supposed to go this far. You told me pieces," I said calmly. "And now I want the whole truth." She looked away, jaw tightening. "Hannah, if you won't tell me, I will tell Daniel what I saw." Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide and sharp. "No," the word cut through the air like a knife. "You can't tell him. He deserves to know. You'll ruin everything." "No, Hannah," I said, voice steady. "You did that." Her breath hitched. She looked like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong word away from falling. "Tell me why," I said quietly. "Tell me why you lied about being pregnant." She kept staring at the floor. "Hannah," I said again, gently this time. "Please." Her voice came out small. "Because I thought he'd leave me if I didn't." I inhaled sharply. "What gave you that idea?" "Because," her voice cracked. "Because I saw his messages." A chill slid down my spine. "What messages?" She swallowed hard. "He was talking to someone. A girl. Before we got married." I blinked. "And you assumed they were romantic?" She shook her head. "No. They were friendly. Too friendly." He told her things he didn't tell me. She wrapped her arms around herself. I felt invisible. Replaceable. Her voice trembled. "And then he started talking about wanting a family. Wanting kids. I thought, if I got pregnant, he'd never look at another woman. He'd be mine." My heart ached with a strange mix of anger and pity. "But you weren't pregnant," I said softly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks now. "I know. I thought I'd tell him eventually. I thought I'd find a way out before he noticed." Her voice broke in the middle. "But then he got so excited, and the lie got too big." She covered her face. I didn't know how to stop. I took a slow breath. "Hannah, why didn't you just tell him the truth?" She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Because he would have left me. I shook my head gently. And now? She didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. Now he still will. Because the betrayal is bigger than the fear that caused it. As she cried in front of me, I realized something painful. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't evil. She was broken, terrified, insecure to the point of destruction. But that didn't mean Daniel had to suffer for her fear. And the truth, the full truth, still hadn't been revealed. Not by a long shot. Because the next thing she said was the moment the floor dropped out from under me. I didn't just fake the pregnancy, she whispered. My breath froze. There's something else, something I hid, something from before I met Daniel. She looked up at me with hollow, haunted eyes. And if you tell him, he'll hate me forever. Her words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, poisonous, impossible to ignore. Something else. Something from before Daniel. Something she'd buried deep enough to believe it would never surface. I stood there in her living room, heart pounding slow and hard, watching her twist her fingers together like she was bracing for an impact that hadn't come yet. Hannah, I said quietly, what are you talking about? She didn't answer right away. Her breathing grew shallow, her eyes darting between the floor and the window as if she needed an escape. Finally, she sank onto the edge of the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. I had a baby before, she whispered. The room seemed to contract around me. What did you say? She lifted her gaze just long enough to let me see the truth trembling behind it. Before I met Daniel. Before anything. I was 19. I had a baby. My head spun. And where's the child now? Even as I asked, something cold settled in my stomach. She inhaled shakily. I gave him up. I didn't want to. My family forced me. Her voice cracked. They said I was ruining my life. That no one would ever marry me. That I was too young. A tear slipped down her cheek. I signed the papers. And afterward, I just shut that whole part of my life away. I told myself it never happened. I felt the weight of her confession pressing against my chest, but it didn't give me clarity. It only deepened the ache. Hannah, I whispered, why didn't you tell Daniel this? Would you? She shot back suddenly, a brittle edge cracking through her softness. Would you tell the man you love something that would make him question everything about you? I didn't answer. She didn't give me time to. I thought, if I became pregnant again, for real, maybe it would make that secret feel smaller. Like it belonged to some old version of me. A girl who didn't know better. Her voice lowered to a trembling murmur. But I couldn't. We tried for months. And nothing happened. I closed my eyes. The pieces were beginning to form a shape, one I wasn't ready to look at directly. So you pretended, I said softly, to avoid telling him the truth. She nodded. And when the lie got too big, she closed her eyes tightly. I used the story of losing the baby so I wouldn't have to keep up the act. My breath caught. My son, my sweet, gentle Daniel, had mourned a child that never existed. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. He loved the idea of being a father. He talked about it every day. And every time he did, I felt the walls closing in. I kept thinking, if he finds out I already had a child once, if he finds out I gave him up, he'll look at me differently. Like I'm someone who doesn't deserve a second chance. I sat across from her, feeling a mix of emotions I could barely untangle: anger, pity, grief, disbelief. Hannah, I said slowly, you didn't trust him enough to love you with the truth. I know. Her voice was barely audible. And now, I continued, you've built your marriage on a lie. She let out a sob. I didn't mean to hurt him. I swear I didn't. I just wanted to keep him. I wanted a life that wasn't full of shame and disappointment. My voice softened, not for her sake, but for mine. What happened to your son? The one you gave up? Her face twisted with pain. I don't know. I never looked. I never asked. My parents handled everything. They made sure the adoptive family signed papers that kept me out of it permanently. I exhaled slowly. Part of me wanted to reach for her, to comfort her, but a larger part of me knew this wasn't the kind of hurt you could soothe with a hand on the shoulder. This was the kind of hurt that rippled outward, touching everything, everyone. Especially Daniel. Why tell me this now? I asked gently. She met my eyes finally, fully. Because I know you're going to tell him. A hollow laugh slipped out. You're too honest not to. I didn't deny it. Her voice trembled again. I needed someone to know the whole story before it all falls apart. Before he looks at me like I'm a stranger. I swallowed hard. Hannah, you should be the one to tell him. She shook her head fiercely. I can't. I'll break him. You already have, I said softly. She flinched, the truth hitting her like a blow. A long silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, suddenly, a sound shattered it. The front door unlocking. Footsteps. A voice. Han? You home? Daniel. Hannah's eyes widened in terror. She stood up so fast she nearly tripped over herself. I can't face him, she whispered. Not like this. Not now. She backed toward the hallway, eyes wild. Then she turned and disappeared into the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. A second later, Daniel walked into the living room, keys in hand, work shirt slightly wrinkled, looking exhausted. Mom, he said, surprised. What are you doing here? My heart clenched painfully. His eyes, so full of hope despite everything, looked straight at me. And I realized in that moment, this was the crossroads. The moment. Everything changed. For him. For her. For all of us. I opened my mouth, not even sure which truth I was ready to reveal. But before I could speak, Daniel frowned slightly and asked, Where's Hannah? She okay? I looked toward the closed bedroom door. Inside that room was the woman he loved, the woman who had lied to him, the woman who was still hiding the biggest truth of all. And then I heard it. A muffled sound. A thump. A short, sharp gasp. Daniel turned instantly, alarmed. What was that? His feet were already moving toward the hallway. My voice caught in my throat. Daniel, wait, but he didn't. He pushed open the bedroom door. And in that instant, I saw his world shatter in real time. There, on the floor, half hidden behind the dresser, was the fake silicone belly. Scattered beside it were straps, padding, the box it came in. And Hannah, standing rigid, tears streaking her face, looking like someone who'd been caught holding a crime. Daniel froze. His face drained of color. His eyes widened. His breath stopped. Then, with a voice so broken I'll never forget it, he whispered, What is this? Daniel didn't move at first. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He stood there at the doorway of his own bedroom, staring at the pile of silicone and straps on the floor as if they were the shattered pieces of his entire future. The nursery he dreamed of, the father he wanted to become, the child he believed he'd lost. All of it, every bit, lay exposed in that one horrific moment. Hannah pressed herself against the wall, hands trembling, lips quivering. She looked like someone whose lies had finally run out of places to hide. Daniel, she whispered, voice cracking. Please. I can explain. Daniel stepped inside slowly, his eyes fixed on the fake belly the way someone watches a house burn down. Explain? His voice was hoarse. Barely there. Almost childlike. He turned to her, eyes wide with the kind of pain no mother ever wants to see in her child's face. You told me. He swallowed hard. You told me we lost our baby. Hannah sobbed, her legs folding beneath her as she sank onto the edge of the bed. I know, she cried. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop lying. Daniel blinked slowly, as if processing each word with agony. So you were never pregnant. It wasn't a question. Just a broken truth being dragged into the light. She shook her head. Daniel's hands rose to his face, covering his mouth as his breath stuttered. He shook his head once, twice, needing the physical motion to force belief into his mind. Why, Hannah? His voice shattered mid-sentence. Why would you do that to me? To us? To her? He motioned weakly toward me without looking why. I stood in the doorway, heart tearing with every sound he made. No mother ever wants to witness her child learning what cruelty feels like. Hannah collapsed forward, elbows on her knees, hair falling around her face. I was scared, she choked. I thought you were slipping away from me. Slipping away? Daniel echoed, stunned. What are you talking about? I was painting a nursery for us. I was reading books about how to take care of you. How was I slipping away? I saw your messages, she blurted. With that girl from work. Months ago. Before we got married. Daniel froze, hands dropping from his face. Messages, he repeated. You mean Angela? The one who got laid off? Yes. Her voice was sharp, frantic. You told her things you didn't tell me. You trusted her. You opened up to her about your stress, about your doubts. I saw it. I saw how easy it was for you to talk to her. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. And your solution, he said, voice trembling, was to fake a pregnancy? I didn't mean for it to go that far, she sobbed. I needed to feel secure. And when you smiled at me and held my hand when I told you, I thought it would fix everything. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. You lied to me about carrying our child. She folded her arms around herself. I know. You lied to me about losing that child. I know. You made me mourn something that never existed. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you the truth anymore. Every day I woke up thinking I'd confess, and then every day I told myself tomorrow would be better. Daniel shook his head slowly. This is cruelty, Hannah. You didn't just lie. You played God with my heart. She looked up at him, despair etched across her face. Please, Daniel. Please, I didn't do it to hurt you. I was just ashamed. Of what? He demanded, voice cracking. Ashamed of lying? Or ashamed of something else? Her breath stalled. Something shifted behind her eyes. And in that moment, Daniel realized what I already knew. There's more, he whispered. Hannah's shoulders shook. Please don't make me say it, she begged. Not like this. Not in front of. Daniel cut her off. Say it. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Deadly. Then, barely audible, I had a baby before. Daniel blinked. Before us. His voice rose painfully. You, what? Hannah, what are you? I was 19, she whispered. I got pregnant. I didn't have support. My parents forced me to give him up. I didn't want to. I didn't choose it. Daniel stumbled back a step. And you never told me. I was afraid, she cried. Afraid if you knew I wasn't perfect, if you knew my past, you'd walk away. I didn't want to lose you. Daniel's voice came out hollow. So instead, you made me believe I had a child. Then ripped it away. All to cover your shame. She sobbed harder. Daniel, please. I never meant to hurt you like this. He laughed, an ugly, strangled sound that didn't belong to him. Hurt me? He pointed at the silicone belly on the floor. You built our marriage on a grave. Not a real grave, something uglier. A fake one. A lie. Hannah crawled toward him on her knees, reaching for his hand. Daniel, please don't leave me. Please. I can fix it. I can make it better. Please don't turn away. Daniel stepped back, out of her reach. I don't even know who you are. She let out a sound like her heart was ripping in her chest. Then Daniel looked at me for the first time since entering the room, eyes wet and stunned. Mom, did you know? I felt the question hit me like a blow. I inhaled shakily. I found out a few days ago, I whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. I wanted you to hear it from her. His face crumpled. He wasn't angry at me. He was broken. He sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders shook once, twice, and then his grief tore through him in quiet, painful sobs. Hannah reached out again, voice trembling. Daniel, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to keep you. He lifted his head, tears staining his cheeks. You didn't keep me, he whispered. You lost me. Hannah's breath hitched. And then Daniel stood up. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just with the quiet, final strength of someone whose heart had been pushed past its limit. I need you to leave, he said. Her face strained. What? I can't look at you right now. I can't hear your voice. I can't breathe in the same room. Daniel, please leave. She sobbed so hard her whole body shook. But she got up, gathered her things, walked toward the door with trembling steps. Before she stepped out, she turned back to him, voice breaking. I do love you. Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. And then, Hannah closed the door behind her. The house fell silent. Only Daniel's quiet, wrecked breathing filled the room. And my heart broke for him all over again. The silence after Hannah left felt like a living thing. Heavy. Stretching. Filling every corner of that room. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands hanging limp between them. His breathing was uneven, the way a child breathes after crying themselves empty. I didn't touch him at first. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Some moments require stillness. After a long stretch of quiet, minutes, maybe more, he wiped his face with the back of his hand and whispered, "How could she do that to me?" I sat beside him, leaving just enough space for him to choose whether he wanted closeness. "She was scared," I said softly. "But fear doesn't excuse what she did." He nodded slowly, eyes staring at the floor. "It wasn't just a lie," he murmured. "It was everything. Every moment we planned. Every night she asked me to hold her stomach. Every time she cried about being tired. Every time she talked to me about baby names." He covered his face again, voice cracking. "She made me love someone who didn't exist." My heart clenched. I placed a hand on his back, lightly, just a steady presence. "Daniel, you didn't do anything wrong." He let out a shaky breath. "That's the worst part," he whispered. "I was ready to give her everything. I was ready to be a father. I wanted that so badly. And she knew it." He looked up at me then, eyes red, heavy, hollow. "Do you know what it feels like to mourn a child that wasn't even real?" I swallowed hard. There are questions that break a mother's heart in ways nothing else can. That was one of them. "I know what it feels like," I said gently, "to love something with your whole heart, only to find out it wasn't what you believed." He nodded, letting my words settle. Then he whispered something I didn't expect. "I need answers." His voice wasn't loud or angry, it was steady. Grounded. Resolute. "What kind of answers?" I asked. "All of them," he said. "What she lied about. What she hid. Why she really did it. And what else she hasn't told me." He stood up slowly, wiping his face again, this time with more control. "She said she had a baby before," he murmured. "A son." His voice wavered. "She didn't even tell me his name." "We don't know if she knows it," I reminded him softly. He nodded, exhaling. "Mom, I have to know the truth. All of it." I watched him closely. "And if the truth hurts more than the lie?" I asked. He looked straight at me. "Then I'd rather hurt with the truth than live with a lie." He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He didn't storm out. He made a calm, devastating decision. And I followed his lead. For the rest of that evening, Daniel stayed with me at my house. I made chamomile tea because chamomile can soften even the hardest nights, and grilled cheese sandwiches he didn't eat. He sat at the dining table with his laptop open, staring at the glow of the screen like it carried some secret he needed to uncover. "Mom," he said quietly, "do you think she lied about anything else?" "Yes," I answered honestly. "I think there's more she's hiding." A silence passed between us. He clicked open a tab, typed something into the search bar, hesitated. Then, "How do I find adoption records?" My breath caught. "Daniel, those records might be sealed." "I know," he whispered, "but I have to try." He scrolled, reading through forums, legal sites, government pages. Every few minutes he'd sigh or clench his jaw or rub his eyes. Some things on the screen made him shake his head. "This says some parents who give up a child, they just move on. They don't look back." He paused. Was that what she planned? To never tell me? To pretend she never had a child at all? I didn't answer. He wasn't really asking me. He was asking the universe why his life had become something he no longer recognized. After a long while, he closed the laptop gently. "Mom, I need to talk to her parents." I froze. "The people who forced her to give up her son?" He nodded. "They were part of the lie. Maybe not this one, but the first one. I want to know what else they covered up. What else they told her. What kind of family she came from." His voice hardened, quiet, cold. "And I want to know why she thought she needed to trap me to keep me." The word trap stung. But it was the truth he was starting to see clearly. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "Are you sure you're ready for that conversation?" I asked. He nodded. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." And in his voice I heard something I had been waiting for. Strength. Boundaries. self-worth. Even in the middle of heartbreak, he was reclaiming himself. The next day, Daniel called Hannah's parents. I sat in the living room, pretending to read a magazine but really listening for every shift in his voice. He put the phone on speaker. A woman's voice answered. "Hello." "Hi, Mrs. Collins," Daniel said, voice tight but controlled. "It's Daniel." There was a pause. "Oh, Daniel. How are you, sweetheart?" Her politeness felt artificial. Tight. Stiff. "I've been better," Daniel said. "I'm sure you and Hannah are going through a lot right now." "She told us," Daniel cut her off. "She lied." Dead silence. She lied about the pregnancy. She lied about the miscarriage. And she lied about something else. Another silence. Longer. Sharper. Then the mother spoke, voice suddenly brittle. "What, exactly, did she tell you?" I leaned forward in my seat. "She told me she had a baby before," Daniel said. "When she was 19. A breath caught on the other end. That's complicated." "It's not complicated," Daniel said gently. "It's the truth. And I deserve to hear all of it." The father's voice joined older, rougher. "Son, there are things that are better left buried." Daniel stiffened. "I disagree." The father sighed heavily. "Hannah was a child. Barely an adult. She made a mistake." "She had a baby," Daniel corrected. "That's not a mistake. That's a life." "Look, son, don't call me son," Daniel said quietly. It was the first real boundary he'd drawn in this entire ordeal. "You forced her to give up her baby?" he asked. Silence. Then the father said, "We did what we thought was best for her future." "And what about the child's future?" Daniel asked. "Did that matter to you?" Another silence. "She wasn't ready to be a mother," the mother said finally. "She was scared. Alone. No support." Daniel closed his eyes, breathing through the weight of it. "And you told her to lie to me too? To keep that part of her life hidden?" "No," the father snapped, defensive now. "That was her choice. And apparently, so were the lies." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That's all I needed to know." He ended the call before either parent could respond. Then he sat back, shoulders slumped, eyes distant. "That's it," he whispered. "That's her pattern. Every time she feels cornered, she lies. Every time she feels scared, she hides. Every time she feels insecure, she hurts the people closest to her." He rubbed his face. "And I let myself believe it was love." That night, Daniel stayed with me again. But this time, he slept. For the first time since the fake miscarriage, he actually slept. Exhausted. Emotionally drained. But resting. And while he slept on the couch, one arm flung over his face, his chest rising in slow, steady breaths, I sat quietly beside him, knitting in the soft glow of the lamp. Not because I needed another scarf, but because knitting is what I do when life feels too big, too sharp, too painful. Loop by loop. Stitch by stitch. You turn chaos into something that holds together. And as I worked, I whispered a small prayer over my son. That the next step in this journey, whatever it looked like, would bring him truth, peace, healing. Because the public consequence was coming next. And neither of us knew just how explosive it was going to be. Daniel slept most of the morning. His body must have finally reached a point where it could no longer carry the weight of heartbreak. He stayed curled on the couch, wrapped in one of my old quilts, the faded blue one his grandmother stitched when he was a boy. When he finally stirred, sunlight was peeking through the curtains, dust floating gently in the warm glow. I was at the kitchen counter cooking eggs, trying to fill the house with a soft, comforting smell. He sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Morning, sweetheart," I said quietly. He nodded, voice hoarse. "Morning." I didn't ask if he slept well. Some things don't need questions. He came to the table and sat down, staring at his untouched breakfast. Not hungry, but present. And that was enough. After a long moment, he lifted his head. "Mom, I think people deserve to know the truth." I frowned slightly. "What people?" He swallowed. "My sister. My uncle. Even my coworkers. Everybody has been texting me, checking on us, sending condolences." My heart dropped. Of course. People had mourned with him. offered sympathy, prayed for him, all for a child who never existed. I exhaled slowly. That's a lot to carry, Daniel. Are you sure you want to expose all this? Yes, he said firmly. Because I don't want sympathy for a lie. And I don't want her using this story again with anyone else. There was a quiet power in his voice, a clarity I hadn't heard since before the fake pregnancy. All right, I said softly. How do you want to do this? I'll start with Sarah, his sister, my daughter, and the most protective person in our family. This was going to be a storm. Sarah arrived within an hour. She burst into the house without knocking, eyes wide and worried. Mom said you were staying here. Oh my God, Daniel, are you okay? Do you need anything? Water? Food? Should I go yell at a doctor, Sarah? Daniel said gently, cutting her off. She froze, eyes darting between us. What is it? Daniel took a deep breath. There was no miscarriage. Sarah blinked. What? There was no baby. Silence. Sharp and immediate. Sarah's eyebrows pulled together. What do you mean, no baby? She was pregnant. I saw her belly. We all did. Daniel motioned toward the bedroom. It was fake. Sarah stared at him for a full 5 seconds before her mouth opened. I'm sorry, she what? Daniel's voice cracked as he explained. The fake belly. The lie about the hospital. The confession about her past. The unraveling of everything he knew. By the time he finished, Sarah's face had turned red, not from embarrassment, but from a slow-rising fury. That woman, she whispered, trembling, came to MY house. Ate MY food. Held MY kids. And all that time she was lying to us. She was scared, Daniel said softly. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. I don't care if she was scared. You don't fake a whole pregnancy. You don't make someone mourn a child that was never real. Tears burst in Sarah's eyes, surprising her as much as it surprised me. You're my brother, she whispered. How dare she do that to you? Daniel hugged her then, and for the first time, I saw him cry, not just from heartbreak, but from the weight of being loved. I'm okay, he murmured. Or at least, I will be. Sarah held him tighter. You better be. Because if not, I will find that girl and Sarah, I warned gently. She huffed. I'm just saying. She's lucky I'm a Christian woman. But the way she said it made both Daniel and me crack a small smile. When rage settles, sometimes humor slips in, even if only for a heartbeat. Sarah didn't intend to tell the rest of the family. But in families, news is like smoke. The smallest spark sets the whole place aflame. By evening, my phone buzzed nonstop. My sister. My cousin Marcia. Daniel's aunt from across town. Even my pastor's wife. Each message more shocked than the last. Is it true? I can't believe she did that. Oh, honey, he doesn't deserve this. I knew something was strange. She always avoided eye contact. Everyone had something to say. And none of it was kind. By nightfall, the story had reached people outside our family circle, Daniel's coworkers, neighbors, even the woman next door who knew everything about everyone. Part of me wanted to shield Daniel from the whispers, the gossip, the sympathy. But another part of me watched him handle it with quiet, grounded strength. He didn't retaliate, didn't lash out, didn't tell dramatic tales. Whenever someone texted him, he responded simply, yes, it's true. I'm okay. Thank you. And with every calm answer, I saw him regain a piece of himself. At around 9 p.m., there was a knock on the door. I opened it and froze. Hannah. Her hair was a mess, eyes raw and swollen, makeup smeared. She clutched her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Can I talk to Daniel? She whispered. Behind me, Daniel stepped into the hallway. Hannah, I murmured carefully. I just want to explain, she said, voice trembling. Not to fix things. Just to apologize. Daniel didn't answer for a long moment. Then he nodded slightly. Okay. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a gulf of pain between them. Hannah reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. This is the only picture I have, she whispered. Of my son, the one I gave up. Daniel took the paper gently, unfolded it. A faded photograph of a newborn in a hospital blanket. He exists, she whispered. I needed you to know I wasn't lying about everything. Daniel looked at the picture for a long time. Then he set it down. "Hannah," he said softly, "I'm sorry you went through that alone. I really am." She wiped her eyes, nodding quickly. "But that pain," he continued, "does not justify creating new pain for someone else." She sobbed, shoulders shaking. I know. I ruined everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear me say I'm sorry. I was broken long before I met you. You just never saw the cracks." Daniel inhaled deeply. "I hope you get help," he whispered. "But I can't be part of this anymore." Her breath hitched. "So, this is goodbye?" Daniel nodded. "Goodbye, Hannah." She cried silently, stood slowly, walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back. "Please don't hate me." Daniel shook his head. "I don't hate you. I just can't trust you." And that was the deepest truth of all. Hannah left quietly, closing the door with a soft click. Daniel exhaled shakily, shoulders dropping. It was over. Really over. The night after Hannah said goodbye, Daniel didn't sleep at all. Not from heartbreak this time, but from the sheer exhaustion of release. The lie was over. The confusion was over. The weight he'd been carrying for months had finally fallen away. But freedom, I've learned, comes with its own kind of ache. In the early dawn hours, I found him sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the soft blue sky that comes right before sunrise. He held a mug of coffee that had gone cold long ago. I stepped outside quietly, didn't interrupt, just sat down next to him. He finally spoke. "Mom, you ever feel like your whole life was playing out in someone else's hands?" I looked at him gently. "Sometimes," I said. "But the thing about hands is, you can take your life back whenever you choose." He nodded slowly, thinking that over. The yard was quiet, dew on the grass, faint hum of the morning, birds just beginning to stir awake. After a moment, he whispered, "I don't feel angry anymore." "Good," I said softly. "I just feel sad." Like something precious slipped through my fingers. "You lost trust," I answered. "And trust is worth more than anything else." He took a deep breath and let it out slow. "I think what hurts most is that she didn't let me choose. If she told me the truth about her past, her son, I wouldn't have left her. I would have stood by her." I rested a hand on his arm. "Honesty could have built something real between you." I paused. "But lies build cages, sweetheart. And she locked both of you inside hers." He nodded again, rubbing his face. "And now?" "And now," I said, "you get to decide what comes next. Your life is yours again." Daniel stayed with me for another week. Not because he needed a place to hide, but because healing is easier with someone sitting close, even in silence. Little by little, he began re-entering his own life. He returned to work. He saw his friends again. He started running in the mornings, like he used to. One afternoon, I heard him on the phone with his boss, apologizing for being distracted these past months. He didn't mention Hannah, not because he was hiding it, but because he refused to let her lies define him. And that told me he was turning a corner. He also took down the small cradle he'd built in the spare bedroom. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly, with a gentleness that made my chest ache. He stacked the parts neatly and placed them in the garage. When he walked back into the house afterward, he didn't cry. He simply exhaled a long, deep release, like exhaling months of illusion. That evening he told me, "I think I'm finally letting go." A few days later, while we were eating lunch, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and froze. "It's her." I put my fork down slowly. "Hannah?" He nodded. He stared at the message a while, unreadable. Then he read it aloud. I checked. "He's healthy. His adoptive family says he's doing well. I thought you should know that." Daniel swallowed hard. "She reached out to his family," he murmured. "After all these years." Then he read the second part. "I'm starting therapy tomorrow." Silence fell. Daniel's gaze softened, not with longing, but with something quieter. Compassion. "She's trying," he whispered. "You don't owe her anything," I said gently. "I know," he replied, "but I don't want to carry bitterness." He stared at the message again. Then he typed one sentence back. "I hope you find healing. No more. No less." He set the phone down. That chapter's closed, he whispered. I think I'm ready to move on. In the weeks that followed, I watched a quiet transformation unfold. He wasn't the same man he'd been before the lies, but he was better, stronger, wiser, more honest with himself. He joined a small support group at the community center, men who had experienced emotional manipulation, lies, betrayals. The first night he came back, he told me, it felt good to talk without feeling weak. He started journaling again, something he had stopped when Hannah got pregnant. He reconnected with old hobbies, woodworking, hiking, fixing things around the house that didn't even need fixing. He even watched me knit with genuine interest one evening. What do you get out of it? He asked. Peace, I answered. He smiled faintly. Maybe I should learn. And so I taught him. My grown son, big hands clumsy with the yarn and needles, learning something gentle and slow. Healing sometimes looks like that, small steps, soft routines, hands slowly becoming steady again. A month later, Hannah asked to meet Daniel one last time. Not to rekindle anything, not to change his mind, just to apologize face to face. He agreed. When he came home afterward, I could tell the conversation had been heavy but necessary. What happened? I asked. He shrugged gently. She cried. I listened. She took responsibility, real responsibility, for everything. She said she's working through her trauma, and I hope she is. Did she want you back? He shook his head. No. She said she doesn't deserve me. And she's right. He wasn't arrogant about it. Just honest. And how do you feel? I asked. He thought for a moment. Free, he said. And strangely, grateful. For what? I asked softly. For finding out now, he replied. For knowing the truth before building a life on lies. He took a deep breath. And for the chance to start over one day, with someone who chooses honesty. Seeing Daniel heal helped me heal too. For months I'd been carrying guilt. Guilt for not seeing the signs sooner, for not protecting him from heartbreak, for knitting tiny baby socks that would never be worn. But healing isn't just for the one hurt directly. It's for everyone who loved them too. One evening on the porch, as we watched the sun dip behind the trees, Daniel said, Mom, thank you for standing by me. For being here. I smiled. You never have to thank me for loving you. He leaned his head on my shoulder, a gesture he hadn't done since he was a child. We sat like that for a long while. No fake dreams. No lies. No illusions. Just truth. Just peace. Just the two of us, whole, steady, and finding our way back to life again. Time has a strange way of softening even the sharpest memories. Months passed. The story that once felt like it would define Daniel's entire future slowly began to fade into something else. Not a wound, not a scar, but a lesson. Life did not return to what it was before. It never does after a betrayal that deep. But it became gentler. Daniel found a small apartment across town, nothing extravagant, just a clean, quiet place with big windows and soft light. The first time I visited, I noticed he'd hung simple paintings on the wall. Landscapes. Sunsets. Open fields. Freedom, expressed in color. He bought new furniture. A new coffee maker. Even a new set of dishes, blue ceramic ones he said reminded him of calm waters. What about the old things? I'd asked. He smiled faintly. Some things aren't meant to follow you into your new life. Little by little, he rebuilt himself. He joined hiking groups on weekends. Volunteered at the youth center teaching woodworking. Even started attending therapy, a step I silently thanked God for. Sometimes, when he talked about what happened, he did so without breaking, without anger, without bitterness. Not because he'd forgotten, but because he'd grown. One afternoon, about 6 months after everything happened, we sat together on the small balcony of his apartment. He made us iced tea, too much sugar, just like he used to make as a teenager, and we watched people walking on the street below. Out of nowhere, he said, Mom, I forgive her. I looked at him gently. You don't have to, I said. I know. He took a sip of tea. But I want to. I nodded slowly. What changed? He leaned back in his chair, eyes soft. I realized forgiveness isn't for her. It's for me. As long as I stayed angry, she still had control over a part of my heart. His voice grew quiet. And I want all of my heart back. For myself. And for whoever I love next. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You're a good man, Daniel. He smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in what felt like ages. I'm trying to be. A few weeks later, Daniel told me he'd been talking to someone. A coworker. A friend. Nothing romantic yet. He wasn't rushing anything, but something about the way he mentioned her felt different. He said she was kind, patient, honest. That last part matters, he told me with a soft laugh. A lot. I didn't pressure him. Didn't tease. Didn't push him forward. Healing has its own pace, and Daniel was finally letting life unfold naturally, without fear or guardedness. One evening, he brought her to Sunday dinner. Not as a girlfriend. Not as anything official. Just as a friend. And when I saw the two of them talking gently, easily, with no shadows in their voices, I felt a kind of quiet gratitude take root in me. He was allowing light back in. Slowly, carefully. But genuinely. In the months after she left, Hannah kept her distance. She reached out once more, not to Daniel, but to me. It was a letter. Handwritten. Shaky. Raw. She apologized not for the lie itself. Daniel had already heard that, but for the deeper wound, for stealing a dream, for manufacturing grief, for dragging us all into the darkness of her own unresolved pain. She also wrote about therapy, about confronting her past, about reconnecting with the adoptive parents of her biological son, not to take him back, but to understand the piece of herself she had tried to bury. I read the letter twice, then folded it softly and put it away. There is no satisfaction in someone else's suffering, only a quiet hope that they someday become better than they were. And I do hope that for her. But I also know this. Some people can only walk with you for a season. Some lessons only come through heartbreak. And some truths must be faced alone. One crisp autumn evening, Daniel and I sat on his balcony again, wrapped in blankets as the wind rustled through the trees. He looked out into the fading light and said, "You know, Mom, I don't regret loving her." I looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because I loved honestly," he said. "And that means I didn't lose anything." She did. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from pain, but from pride. He continued, "She lied because she didn't believe she was enough. She manipulated because she feared the truth. But he paused. I showed up with all of myself. And when you love with truth, you don't walk away empty. You walk away knowing who you are." I took his hand again. "You are good," I whispered. "Good in a world that often forgets how to be gentle." He smiled. "And you taught me that." The sun dipped behind the rooftops, painting the sky pink and gold. We sat in silence. Not a sad silence, a peaceful one. Because sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't come with big moments or dramatic revelations. Sometimes it's a quiet breath, a steady heartbeat, a new morning where the first thought isn't pain, but possibility. Life doesn't hand out neat endings. It hands out choices, lessons, second chances wrapped in the smallest moments. My son learned that honesty is worth more than any illusion. That trust is sacred. And that real healing comes when you stop looking at what was lost and start looking at what can be rebuilt. He's rebuilding now. One step at a time. One day at a time. And as his mother, I couldn't be prouder. Some nights now, when the world finally quiets and the air settles soft around my shoulders, I sit with a cup of warm tea and think about everything that happened. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just understanding. Life has a way of showing us who a person truly is when the lights are low and the truth has nowhere left to hide. My son learned something heavy, something I wish he never had to learn so young. Sometimes the people you love the hardest are carrying wounds you can't see. And sometimes, those wounds spill over and cut the very hands trying to hold them. But here's what I carry with me now, a quiet truth I'll whisper to you, the same way I whispered it to my boy on those long, aching nights. You can survive a broken heart, but you should never stay in a broken truth. Honesty may not keep people around, but lies will always tear them apart. If you've ever been hurt by someone you trusted or misled by someone you loved, I hope you remember this. You didn't lose because they lied. They lost because you told the truth. And truth, even when it trembles, even when it hurts, will always lead you back to yourself. Now let me ask you, baby, from wherever you're listening, if you were standing where my son stood, faced with the same lies, the same betrayal, the same heartbreak, would you have walked away too? Tell me in the comments. And if this story touched something in your spirit, don't forget to subscribe so you and I can meet again for another moment, another lesson, another story told from the quiet places of the heart.